Hello and welcome to WTA's Reopening the Commute webinar. We'll be talking about COVID-19 and reopening and what that means for commutes. My name is Caitlin Ahern. I am the Program Manager for Westside Transportation Alliance. So first I'd like to go over who we are. We're WTA, which stands for Westside Transportation Alliance. We are a nonprofit business member organization in Washington County, Oregon, and we provide employees and member organizations with information, incentives, and assistance to encourage transit use, carpooling, bicycling, walking, and teleworking for commute trips. Our programs are made possible by a partnership with Metro, with support from the Federal Transit Administration and from members like you. So thank you for being a member. Here's all of our member logos. As you can see, they kind of span the entire county. We've got some big companies, some small companies, we've got some governments and some nonprofits. So thank you to all of you for being members. Okay, let's talk about COVID-19. So this information is all specific to Washington County. And we are in currently phase 1, which started June 1st. And that means that there's a limited reopening of restaurants, bars, personal services, gyms, and malls. And gatherings of up to 25 people are allowed with physical distancing. And teleworking is encouraged when possible. So the county has also applied for phase 2, but the soonest this would start is July 10th. It hasn't been approved yet. And that just means that some more sectors can reopen, larger groups can meet with physical distancing, and they recommend what they call a limited return to work, where teleworking is still recommended, but it's not required. And then phase 3, in which large events like concerts and sports events can happen, that can only be approved once a reliable treatment or prevention is available. And we don't know when that will be, but we know it won't be at least till September. And all this information can be found on the county's website, so you can see that link below. And they're really the best resource for all COVID-related information and information about the different phases. Here is a handy map that the Oregon Health Authority has provided. This was updated last on June 19th, 2020. So as you can see, the whole Portland metro area, the Washington County, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County are all in phase 1, as is Lincoln County. And then the rest of the state pretty much is in phase 2. And then even once the rest of us get to phase 2, we'll be here for a little while, as we said. So this is a useful map if you want to check it out. So because of this, people have a lot on their minds right now. People are thinking, is it safe to leave my house? Is my job safe? Do I have enough money right now to get through this? What am I supposed to do with my kids all day? Are they going to be able to go back to school? What if I get sick? What if my family gets sick? When is this all going to end? So overall, people, everyone, are just looking for some guidance, some reassurance, and some honest communication. And what makes this really hard is that nobody really knows what's going to happen. We can't predict the future. And so that's frustrating, it's stressful, it's scary. And that's kind of what we have, underlying all of our work right now. But if you think back to March when this all began, I know personally I feel a little better now about the situation than I did in March, because I feel like back then it was like minute by minute there was new information and no one had any idea what was going to happen. Is the world going to end? Is there going to be enough food? Do I need to go to the grocery store and stock up for like a year's worth of supplies? And so I feel like that was the hardest part, when we just like really had no idea what was going on. But now we have 3 months worth of experience, and we can use that experience of working from home or trying to work during the pandemic to build on that knowledge and to become more resilient and adaptable. So even though it's a scary time right now, I do feel like this is an opportunity for everyone, but the learning curve is pretty steep. So I want to emphasize we should be patient with ourselves and with others, and open to flexibility and being able to discuss this honestly and openly as we go. So I would like you to join me on a thought exercise. So I want you to think about the future in a year or two, when hopefully things have passed and things have gotten better. There are going to be a lot of people looking for jobs. There are a lot of people looking for jobs right now. And they may have not had the best experience with their previous employer with COVID. They may have gotten laid off. They may have been told to work when maybe they didn't feel like they were safe in a safe situation to work. And so what a lot of people are going to be asking in job interviews is, tell me about how your organization handled COVID-19. And so I want you to be thinking about that as you move forward right now. How are you going to be able to answer that? And how are your actions right now going to be able to showcase the best of the organization in the future? So some values that you might want to be thinking about are honesty and transparency, a commitment to growth and improvement, employee health and safety, resiliency of the company, and which that means job security for the employees, and a sense of trust. Are you earning a sense of trust from the employees and the community? Now, with all of this in mind, let's talk about commutes. In our live workshop, we did some polls to get an idea of where folks are right now. And so we asked, where are your employees working right now? Are they teleworking? Are they at home? And overall, it seemed like most people were either had most staff teleworking or it was about half and half. And so a lot of people are teleworking right now, but it is important to keep in mind that not everybody can telework, not everybody's jobs allow for it. And so people are still commuting, and that's something to keep in mind when you're planning for the future. And I also asked, has this changed since the beginning of the pandemic? So are people going back to work right now? Are people realizing that maybe more people can telework than they thought? And it seemed like it's either been the same right now than it was in the beginning of all this, or slowly people are coming back on site, and so more people are going to be coming probably in cars, and there might be a lot of traffic coming. We also asked, do you have a telework policy? And specifically what I wanted to know is if you had one before COVID, or if COVID made you create a telework policy, or if you're working on one, or if you aren't going to make one, maybe you don't need one because nobody is able to telework. And then also thinking about how are you communicating this policy to employees, because a policy it doesn't do much good if nobody knows about it. So again, thinking back to how people want honest communication and they want to know like what's going on, make sure you're communicating clearly what this policy is. And it seemed like a couple people had a telework policy in place, which is great. They were very well prepared for this situation. And then a decent amount of people are working on one or are making one because of COVID. And some things that we want to include in telework policy, these are just some examples, maybe you can probably think of some more, is who is eligible to work from home and who makes this decision. So how do you decide both what types of jobs are able to work from home, and also individually as employees, are they set up well to work from home? And is that something they want to do? And is that a decision that they make with their manager? Is that a company-wide decision? And who is the final say in who can do this? Also, you want to think about how you can measure success and productivity. If people are dispersed, then you can't just walk around and see that everybody's working. And so this might cause folks to rethink how they measure success and productivity. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you are always just judging based on results, which is probably how we should be judging success anyway. And so also, what equipment and tools are provided for a home office? It's a little harder to set up a good home office a lot of times. I know I don't really have a dedicated, workspace. I don't have a separate room. And so me and my two roommates need to, coordinate with each other with who gets the dining room table and who gets the porch and everything. And just having some decent equipment and tools available, like, a keyboard, a standing desk, things like that, really, I think, help make a difference. And so what can the company provide to folks in order to make their setup as good as possible? How are files and resources available? If you depend on paper files in the office, how are those going to get converted to online files? Making sure that everybody has what they need in the cloud or at home. And then especially if there's like sensitive information, like employee information or like company trade secrets, anything like that, how are you ensuring that that's secure still if folks are accessing that from different parts of the city or the state? Another thing maybe to think about is how flexible are your hours of operation? Are you able to let employees kind of pick their own hours that work for them? Maybe if they're morning people or night people, or maybe if they have kids at home, they want to do they want to spend some time with their kids during the day and then maybe get some work done at night. Is that flexible? And then that kind of goes with how do you measure productivity? And so are you looking at the results? Or maybe you have, strict hours of operation where you're expecting people to call at a certain time, and so people need to be available at a certain time. So that's something to consider. And then communication tools. So it's a little harder to communicate if people are all separate from each other. You're not just going to run into each other and just have chit chat. You're not going to be able to just like pop in and be like, hey, I had a quick question. And so what kind of communication tools are you using? And then I'm sure you can think of some more. But I did want to direct your attention to this great resource at the link at the bottom. Get There has a good remote work guide, and they include a checklist for each job, like a sample assessment that managers can go through with employees to see if their job and if their personality really are good fits for work from home. So it's a great resource. I recommend it. Another thing we talked about is if you're bringing employees back on site, do you have a formal back to work plan? And specifically, does it include commutes? Does it include commutes? Does it include telework? Are you working on one, or maybe you're not planning on making one? And it seemed like most people are either working on it or already have one, and a lot of people are including telework, understandably, but not everyone is including commutes. And I'll talk about that on the next slide, but one tip I want to make sure that everybody knows is make sure you're sharing the plan, again, with all employees to improve that communication and trust so everybody knows what the plan is. So hopefully I can convince you that commuting is a good thing to include in your back to work plan. So commuting is a major part of an employee's day if they're traveling, and right now it's more stressful than ever because there's health and safety to think about on top of having maybe a long, annoying commute. And some things you can consider are carpool matching. So carpooling might be a good option if folks want to have like a commute buddy. If you know someone who lives near you, or you can get the Get There tool for carpool matching, then maybe you can just have the same carpool buddy every day, and then that's limiting the amount of people you're interacting with, but it's still sharing a ride. And another thing to keep in mind is that not everybody has access to a car, not everybody has a car at all. Driving is expensive, and so any way you can help folks have other options is always good. So carpooling might be good for some people. Some people might still want to take transit, and then something you can consider are flexible hours so that people can avoid peak transit times so that there's less people on the bus or the MAX. And one thing that I found really useful, I'm signed up for updates from TriMet. You can sign up for email updates and text updates, and so I've been getting emails about the fact that they require masks and they provide masks on the bus and they have hand sanitizer, so you can really stay up to date on what they're doing and on schedule changes. And texts especially are great because you can pick the routes near your house or near your work, and you can see if they're delayed or not. So that's really useful. You can sign up for those at trimet.org. Something you might consider is some bike repair education and stipends, or some other bike-related assistance for your employees. Biking is very popular right now. You may have noticed a lot of people out biking. People are just trying to get out of their house and get some exercise. It's a good active commute. If your gym is closed, or if you don't want to interact with other people at the gym, it's a good way to just get outside and get some exercise. I know that bike sales are through the roof right now, and at some places it's hard to get a tune-up scheduled because places are so booked out. So cycling is very important, or very, very popular right now. So you can ride that wave and add that to your commute plan. We talked about telework policies. So telework expectations and policies is something that you'll want to include on your plan. And maybe you want to provide some individual commute planning for folks and just see what works for everybody. Maybe people can talk with their managers. Maybe you can have us at WTA help with your individual commute planning, because that is time intensive, but it's something that a lot of people find useful. And maybe you want to provide some masks and sanitizer for people who are taking shared modes of commuting. And I do believe if you're having people back at the office, you do need to provide masks anyway. You could check with the county about that. And then lastly, we kind of already touched on communication tools and cloud storage. And so if you have ones that you think are really great and useful, you can share that with us and we can get that out. So I know there's a lot of different tools, and hopefully people are becoming pretty well versed in online communication and cloud storage. So what you want to use and how you want to use it is a good thing to also include in your plan. So lastly, this is the part where I got some input from everybody in the workshop. So people had a lot of good ideas. I wanted to make sure to include everybody else's ideas because I can't think of everything, and I'm not working at your work site. So you know your work site better than me and better than anyone else. And so some things we came up with, I started with patience and empathy, because thinking back to the beginning, everyone's kind of having a hard time right now. And online communication is hard, and accessing what you need to access from somewhere besides your place of work is hard. And so just having some patience and some empathy goes a long way. Somebody brought up that exercise is important. We talked about biking and how popular biking is right now, and if you're kind of stuck in your house, you want to make sure to get outside. And related, mental health is very important, because people have, probably a underlying sense of anxiety over the world right now, and so doing what we can to help with that at work and be understanding about that is very important. Some people have learned that teleworking can be a really good fit for their jobs and for their employees, and so that's a really good learning experience. I think in the past there has been some resistance to teleworking just because it's a lot of hoops to jump through. Understandably, there's a lot to figure out before you can telework, and it's simpler to do what you've always done. And so now that a lot of us have been kind of forced to telework, some of us are learning that it's a good fit. Our friends at Nike let us know that the Nike training app is free during COVID, speaking of exercise, so that's a great tip. And then also the lack of traffic is really nice, so anything we can do to keep that up is great. You want to evaluate your workspace. I touched on this before too. What does your workspace at home look like? And is that a good fit for long term? It may or may not be, so that's important to keep in mind. Some places are subsidizing meditation apps, and so that's another way to keep your mental health healthy, hopefully, and providing resources. So somebody mentioned that their IT team has been, amazing during this process, which is really good to hear, because, it's so hard to figure out how your technology works and how to make it work from afar. And so having a great IT team really goes a long way, and recognizing them for that effort is really important too, because they're probably stressed out right now. One person mentioned that unplugging after work is hard, which is understandable. If you are working in your house and having your regular home life in your house, it's hard to have that separation. And so it's easy for some of us to just keep on working late when maybe that isn't the best idea. Although for some folks that is what works best for them. Maybe they want to take a break during the middle of the day and then finish up late at night, and that's what works for them. But you still want to keep an eye on your hours and making sure you're still having a little bit of separation so you can keep your non-work life protected. One person mentioned that Sit Stand World in Tigard is selling standing desks, and they're pretty good, so that's something to check out. Keeping a variety in your bike rides is great. Instead of having just the same commute every day, you can go explore different areas of town. So that's pretty nice. That's a nice change from before. having dedicated social time. A couple people mentioned they have virtual happy hours with their employees. So that's really nice because you miss out on the social time and just like the chit chat over the cubicle walls if you're not all in the same space. And so just, having that dedicated time is very nice. I talked about flexible teleworking hours. Do we really need to work our 9 to 5, or can we kind of see what works for folks instead? Something definitely to keep in mind is who is at risk when you're bringing people back. Can you work it out so that people who are at higher risk or that are living with people who are at higher risk can stay at home while maybe others who feel a little safer coming back to work can come back? Maybe you can also go off of preferences. I know some people are itching to get back to the office because they're just sick of being at home, but then some people really like being at home, and then some people, like me, I kind of like a balance between the two, having a couple days in the office, having a couple days at home. And so, maybe if you can take into account preferences and risk level, maybe the numbers will end up working out for you. And last thing to keep in mind, this is important, that this is not a normal teleworking situation. So it's a stressful time right now. Kids are at home, everybody's at home. It's rough. Hopefully in the future, once things get a little better, we can have more of a regular, not so stressful teleworking situation. But in the meantime, try not to judge it too hard, because productivity probably isn't going to be as high right now. So it's not normal, and that's okay. The last thing I want to really emphasize is that we're here for you. So WTA can help you get going on all of these things. So this workshop, I really just want it to be a starting point. And so let's chat. Let's see if we can get folks set up and get there. We can help design some employee communications. We can work on your back to work commuting plan together. We can brainstorm and problem solve. Maybe you want to do a employee survey. I think that's the best way to know what people want, is just to ask them. And so I know a lot of people get a lot of surveys, and it's easy to get sick of them, but they are very useful, and you're not going to know what people need unless they tell you, unless you ask. And we also have some expertise in behavior change, so we can do that. And I'm happy to just like chat. I kind of miss chatting with people in meetings, and so if you want to do a video chat, or if we're close by and you want to just like meet in a park and sit 6 feet apart and just chat in person, I'm always happy to just throw around ideas and just see how things are going. Okay, and then this is actually the last thing. I know I've said that for the past 2 slides, but for real this time. We have the Bike More Challenge is still going on. It goes on until the end of June, and so make sure you're logging your rides. Make sure you're signed up on bikemorechallenge.com. We have a bingo game up. This Saturday is, I think, National Bingo Day, and so we've got a fun bingo game where you can check off different blocks and then email us and with some prizes. We have an annual meeting video out. We weren't able to have our annual meeting in person this year, but we did make a year in review video for 2019. So follow this link to check it out on YouTube. We also have a updated strategic plan, and so you can also check that out. That we've been working on that all year, and so that's a great way to stay updated with us. Our friends at Forth have a new webinar series starting in July about electric vehicles. If you're curious about EVs, they're calling it the EV Cafeteria. So follow that link to sign up for their first webinar on July 9th. Ride Connection, who they run the Tualatin Shuttle and the North Hillsborough Shuttle. They're looking into a new transit project in South Beaverton between South Cooper Mountain and Aloha. And so they're just looking for feedback on what folks need, what folks want in that area. They're still in the beginning stages, so follow that link to learn more and to take their survey to see what the community needs are. And then lastly, if you don't know about Best Workplaces for Commuters, it's a national recognition certificate program where if you're doing a lot of transportation options work, like probably all of you are right now, all of this stuff is all transportation options work, then you can get recognized for your efforts and have a nice logo to put on your hiring stuff and on your windows and everything. And so if you want to take a look at that with me, I'm happy to start filling out the application together, and we can work on what it'll take to get you recognized for your efforts. And they also have a teleworking certificate. If you're interested in learning more about teleworking and helping your employees telework, they have a new certificate. And that's it for me. This is my email address. I'm Caitlin at WTA-TMA.org. And thank you for listening to this workshop and this webinar. And feel free to contact me anytime just to chat.